Hey, welcome back, students. In this video, I want to go ahead and talk a little bit about solution stoichiometry. And so you already know from previous videos that stoichiometry essentially involves reactions. Okay, and so let's go ahead and write this one more time. And so the general reaction that we're looking at is some substance A reacting with substance B, and it goes and forms some compound AB. Now, this is generally true with two reactants that you have combining together. This would be a synthesis reaction. But in some other cases, you're actually going to have a combination. So you're going to have compounds. So A and B reacting with C and D. And this here would lead to the combination that you would have here for a product of A and D and C and B. And so the idea here in this second example reaction is that this is a double replacement. And one of the things that we need to make sure that we understand in all of this is that there are coefficients at the very beginning. I'm going to put these in red for each of these. And these coefficients then are going to help us identify the mole ratios between the various compounds that we're going to see in each of the reaction types that we've got in this chapter. So we'll begin with some of the preliminary ones, the synthesis, the decomposition, and then the single and double replacements. But remember, there are things like combustion reactions, and in this chapter you're going to learn about the redox and the acid-base reactions. The main thing I want to make sure that I focus at this point is to bring attention to this thing about solution. So when we talk about solution here, we want to make sure that we kind of identify the big focus of the chapter. Okay, so let me just put this here. So the focus of the chapter is largely going to depend on your ability to actually do the following. You need to be able to rationalize how ions are created in a solution. And this is going to be coming from the compounds that they originate from. And the other item is, so put that as a bullet point, and the other item that you need to be able to do is to use this knowledge to relate to concepts such as concentration. Okay, and so in this chapter, one of the two of the concentrations that we're going to be looking at specifically are the molarity, and the other one is molality. And so the molality is one we'll address just so that you're familiar with the concept. We won't spend too much time on it. A lot of our time is going to be spent on looking at molarity. And so we'll look at that here in a subsequent video. But what we want to make sure that we understand here is that when we talk about solution stoichiometry, we understand that one, we do need to balance the chemical reaction. We need to use the starting amounts of the reactants to determine how much of the product is going to be formed. We also need to know about the mole ratios involved. And if there are any ions that are produced, we need to make sure that we're very fully aware of that. And so part of that discussion when we deal with ions means that you are familiar with the concept here of solubility. Okay? And so a previous video has already talked a little bit about solubility. I'm going to talk a little bit more about this here in the next couple of videos. But what we need to make sure that you understand is what kind of compounds are going to be able to dissolve in water or in another solvent, and what kind of compounds are not. And so all of that depends on the solubility table. So if you haven't watched that video lesson, you definitely want to spend some time and watch that one before we move forward into the next couple of video lessons here. Okay, so for right now, let's kind of look at this here and talk about this with respect to what we're dealing with in terms of solubility. Okay, so whenever we deal with solubility, we are dealing with the following notion: that something is going to dissolve when it's placed in some other compound or substance, or it's not going to dissolve. And so in the next video, we'll explore some of the key words that you need to know for this section. Okay, so if you haven't already done so, make sure you subscribe, keep watching, keep learning, and we'll see you in the next video.